He begins by explaining that Proverbs never treats wealth as an accident or a reward for chance. It frames prosperity as the natural outcome of self-responsibility, self-discipline, and an unshakable mind that chooses order over impulse. He tells the listener that luck is loud but temporary, while discipline is quiet and compounding. When people blame luck, they give away inner power and avoid deep reflection about their habits. Proverbs pulls the listener back to awareness by showing that money follows patterns of behavior. Emotional control, impulse control, and strategic silence shape decisions long before results appear. This perspective builds a strong mindset because it replaces hope with structure and replaces excuses with ownership. He continues by pointing out that Proverbs consistently praises diligence, patience, and consistency, never shortcuts. That's not coincidence. Wealth built without discipline collapses under pressure, while prosperity built through daily habits gains resilience. He explains that discipline isn't restriction, it's direction. When a person controls spending, plans ahead, and avoids emotional decisions, they're practicing growth in real time. This creates silent strength because progress happens without applause. The listener starts to see that discipline is the bridge between intention and outcome, and that bridge must be crossed daily, not occasionally. He brings this wisdom into modern financial life, explaining that people who rely on luck tend to chase trends, overspend on impulse, and react emotionally to setbacks. Proverbs warns against this by elevating patience and focus. He gives an example. Choosing to save consistently instead of chasing quick gains feels boring, but it builds stability. That stability protects prosperity during uncertainty. When discipline governs money choices, fear loses its grip and clarity returns. This is how awareness transforms into action and action into lasting results. He emphasizes that Proverbs connects wealth to character because character sustains discipline when motivation fades. A person with strong habits doesn't need constant inspiration. Consistency carries them forward. Emotional control keeps them from panic buying, risky decisions, or avoidance. Strategic silence allows them to think before acting. Over time, these choices compound, creating resilience that money alone can't buy. Wealth becomes a reflection of who they are, not just what they earn. He closes this topic by reminding the listener that Proverbs removes luck from the equation to return power to the individual. When prosperity is tied to discipline, anyone willing to practice it daily can grow. This truth is uncomfortable but freeing. It demands responsibility, but it offers direction. With this foundation set, he transitions forward because once wealth is understood as a product of discipline, the next step is uncovering the deeper law of self-discipline hidden within ancient wisdom itself. He begins by explaining that ancient wisdom doesn't treat self-discipline as a talent reserved for a few, but as a law that works for anyone willing to apply it. Proverbs reveals that self-discipline is not about intensity or harsh control, but about consistency in small, repeated choices. He tells the listener that people often look for dramatic breakthroughs, yet wisdom points in the opposite direction: quiet structure, daily habits, and steady focus. When self-responsibility is practiced, early and often the mind becomes unshakable because it no longer depends on moods or external pressure. Emotional control grows naturally when decisions are made in advance, and impulse control weakens because temptation has less room to negotiate. He continues by pointing out that Proverbs constantly links discipline to awareness. It warns that a lack of discipline doesn't fail loudly, it fails slowly. Missed opportunities, careless spending, and emotional reactions don't destroy prosperity overnight, but they erode it piece by piece. Ancient wisdom teaches strategic silence as a form of strength, not weakness. Pausing before acting allows inner power to surface and prevents regret. This pause builds a strong mindset because it trains the mind to respond instead of react. Over time, this practice creates silent strength that others may not notice, but results always reveal. He brings this law into modern financial life, explaining that self-discipline shows up in simple behaviors. Spending less than you earn, reviewing numbers calmly, and choosing long-term stability over short-term pleasure. These choices don't feel heroic, but they compound. Persistence turns discipline into a habit, and habit turns effort into identity. The listener begins to see that prosperity isn't chased, it's attracted by order. When discipline leads, growth follows without chaos. He emphasizes that ancient wisdom places discipline before reward for a reason. Reward without discipline creates dependence. Discipline before reward creates freedom. When someone learns to govern themselves, they no longer need external control. Emotional balance improves, focus sharpens, and resilience becomes part of character. This is why Proverbs treats discipline as protection, not punishment. It guards peace, money, and direction all at once. He closes this topic by reminding the listener that laws don't negotiate. They work when applied and fail when ignored. Self-discipline, as revealed in ancient wisdom, operates the same way. Once the listener accepts this, excuses lose power and responsibility feels lighter. With this understanding in place, he transitions forward, because the next step is redefining what true prosperity really means beyond money alone. He begins by explaining that Proverbs never reduces prosperity to numbers in a bank account. It treats wealth as incomplete if it isn't supported by awareness, emotional control, and a strong internal structure. Money alone, without discipline, creates noise, anxiety, and fragile success. He tells the listener that ancient wisdom consistently places peace, clarity, and direction alongside material gain. True prosperity is the ability to make calm decisions, sleep without fear, and move forward with focus even when pressure appears. This definition reshapes the listener's mindset because it removes the illusion that more money automatically fixes poor habits. An unshakable mind is part of wealth itself, not a side benefit of it. He continues by pointing out that Proverbs warns against gaining wealth at the cost of character. Short-term gain without self-responsibility leads to long-term instability. He explains that emotional decisions may create quick wins, but they weaken resilience and destroy consistency. Prosperity, in ancient wisdom, grows where discipline protects daily choices. Strategic silence plays a role here, allowing reflection before action. When a person pauses instead of reacting, inner power replaces urgency. Over time, this calm approach builds silent strength because the individual is no longer controlled by fear, comparison, or impulse. He brings this concept into modern financial life, explaining that many people earn well but live stressed, indebted, or directionless. That's not prosperity, it's imbalance. Proverbs would call this disorder. True prosperity shows up when spending aligns with values, planning replaces panic, and habits support long-term growth. He gives a practical example. Someone who budgets calmly and reviews goals regularly may grow slower, but they grow stronger. That strength protects progress during setbacks and uncertainty. Prosperity becomes sustainable because it's built on structure, not emotion. He emphasizes that Proverbs links prosperity to wisdom because wisdom governs choices when emotions fluctuate. Awareness prevents reckless decisions. Impulse control guards resources. Persistence keeps progress steady even when results feel slow. These qualities create freedom, not limitation. When prosperity is defined this way, comparison loses power and focus sharpens. The listener begins to measure success by stability and direction, not applause or excess. He closes this topic by reminding the listener that money is a tool, not a foundation. Without discipline and inner order, it amplifies weakness. With discipline, it multiplies strength. Proverbs invites the listener to redefine prosperity as alignment between mind, habits, and resources. With this broader understanding in place, he transitions forward, because once prosperity is seen clearly, the next lesson is why discipline must always come before wealth, never after. He begins by explaining that Proverbs places discipline before wealth because order must exist before abundance can be sustained. Wealth without discipline is like pouring water into a broken container. It looks promising for a moment, then disappears. Ancient wisdom makes it clear that money doesn't fix chaos, it amplifies it. He tells the listener that many people chase wealth believing it will force them to become disciplined later, but reality works in reverse. Discipline creates the structure that wealth requires to stay. When self-responsibility guides daily choices, emotional control improves and impulse control weakens. The mind becomes unshakable, not because life is easy, but because decisions are no longer reactive. He continues by pointing out that discipline before wealth protects the individual from their own worst tendencies. Without habits, focus, and consistency, money becomes a temptation instead of a tool. Proverbs repeatedly warns that haste and desire sabotage prosperity. He explains that discipline slows the process just enough to keep the mind clear. Strategic silence allows reflection before spending, investing, or committing. This pause builds inner power because the person chooses deliberately instead of emotionally. Over time, this creates silent strength, the kind that doesn't seek validation but produces stability. He brings the lesson into practical financial life, explaining that disciplined people practice control long before they see major results. They track expenses even when numbers are small, save consistently even when progress feels slow, and plan ahead even when there's no immediate pressure. These actions look insignificant at first, but persistence turns them into momentum. This is how growth compounds quietly. Discipline prepares the mind to handle more without losing balance. He emphasizes that Proverbs treats discipline as preparation, not punishment. It trains the mind to value order, patience, and foresight. When wealth finally arrives, it finds a system ready to receive it. Emotional reactions are muted, focus is sharp, and decisions remain aligned with long-term goals. Prosperity becomes stable because it rests on awareness and habit, not excitement. He closes this topic by reminding the listener that discipline first is not delay, it's acceleration in disguise. It prevents costly mistakes and strengthens resilience. Once discipline is established, wealth follows naturally and stays longer. With this principle understood, he transitions forward, because the next step is examining the mindset difference between those who build wealth wisely and those who lose it carelessly, as revealed in Proverbs. He begins by explaining that Proverbs draws a sharp line between those who grow wealth with intention and those who lose it through neglect. The difference isn't income, talent, or opportunity, it's mindset. The rich, as described in Proverbs, think in terms of order, patience, and responsibility. The careless think in terms of comfort, urgency, and reaction. He tells the listener that this mindset shows up in small, everyday choices long before money ever accumulates. Emotional control allows the discipline to pause, while impulse control fails the careless at the first sign of desire. This gap in awareness quietly determines outcomes. An unshakable mind doesn't chase pleasure, it protects direction. He continues by pointing out that the disciplined mindset values consistency over excitement. Proverbs praises steady diligence and warns against haste because haste feels productive but destroys focus. Careless thinking looks busy, yet lacks depth. The disciplined plan ahead, review their choices, and accept short-term restraint for long-term prosperity. Strategic silence is crucial here. Listening before acting preserves inner power. Over time, this creates silent strength, the kind that compounds without drawing attention. The careless, by contrast, speak and spend quickly, confusing motion with progress and noise with confidence. He brings the lesson into modern financial life, explaining that disciplined thinkers budget before they spend, save before they indulge, and decide before emotions intervene. Careless thinkers do the opposite. They spend first, justify later, and hope outcomes fix mistakes. Proverbs warns that this pattern erodes stability and invites regret. Persistence belongs to the disciplined because they expect results to take time. This expectation builds resilience and keeps them steady during slow seasons. Careless thinking collapses under delay because it depends on immediate reward. He emphasizes that Proverbs links wealth to wisdom, because wisdom governs behavior when temptation appears. The disciplined mind doesn't need perfect conditions to act responsibly. Habit carries the load when motivation fades. Awareness keeps the person aligned with long-term goals, and focus protects them from distraction. Over time, this mindset becomes identity. The person doesn't force good decisions, they default to them. Prosperity becomes a byproduct of character, not a stroke of luck. He closes this topic by reminding the listener that Proverbs doesn't glorify wealth. It exposes the thinking that sustains it. The rich mindset is calm, patient, and structured. The careless mindset is loud, reactive, and short-sighted. Recognizing this difference is a moment of reflection that invites change. With this contrast clear, he transitions forward, because the next lesson is understanding how a lack of discipline quietly destroys prosperity even when income is present. He begins by explaining that Proverbs warns more about slow destruction than sudden loss. Prosperity rarely disappears overnight. It erodes quietly through undisciplined habits, emotional decisions, and ignored responsibilities. He tells the listener that lack of discipline doesn't announce itself as danger. It shows up as small compromises, delayed planning, impulsive spending, and excuses that feel harmless in the moment. Emotional control weakens first, then focus drifts, and before long, consistency disappears. This is how prosperity fades without drama. An unshakable mind recognizes these patterns early and corrects them before damage. In Compounds, he continues by pointing out that undisciplined behavior often feels justified. People tell themselves they'll fix it later, earn more, or start next month. Proverbs exposes this thinking as self-deception. Without self-responsibility, tomorrow becomes a hiding place for today's poor choices. Strategic silence is lost because the mind stays noisy, reactive, and distracted. Inner power fades when decisions are postponed instead of made. Over time, this creates financial stress, not because of lack of opportunity, but because of lack of structure. Prosperity needs order to survive. He brings this wisdom into practical financial life, explaining that undisciplined people may earn well, but live on edge. They avoid reviewing numbers, delay difficult decisions, and rely on short-term comfort to escape pressure. This avoidance weakens resilience and increases anxiety. Discipline, by contrast, brings calm. Reviewing expenses, setting boundaries, and choosing restraint builds awareness and restores control. Persistence in these habits rebuilds stability even after mistakes. Prosperity returns not through luck, but through corrected behavior repeated daily. He emphasizes that Proverbs treats discipline as protection. It guards against impulse, overconfidence, and emotional swings. Without discipline, even success becomes dangerous. Sudden income without habits creates faster collapse. Silent strength comes from routines that operate when excitement fades. Habit becomes the shield that keeps growth intact. When discipline leads, money stops controlling emotions and starts serving purpose. He closes this topic by reminding the listener that prosperity is fragile in the hands of an undisciplined mind. But in disciplined hands, even small resources grow steadily. Lack of discipline destroys quietly. Discipline rebuilds quietly too. The difference is direction. With this truth clear, he transitions forward because the next lesson is understanding the role of patience in building wealth that lasts beyond one season. Before you move on, pause for a moment and be honest with yourself. This isn't just another video to consume and forget. If what you heard made you uncomfortable, that's a signal. Growth always starts there. Discipline, patience, and prosperity aren't built by chance. They're built by daily decisions most people avoid. So here's the question. What is the one habit or financial decision you've been postponing that you know would change your direction if you acted on it today? Write it in the comments and turn intention into commitment. If you're serious about building a strong mindset, emotional control, and lasting prosperity, subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications. Many people watch, feel inspired for a moment and disappear. A few stay consistent and transform their lives. Don't stop here. Click the next recommended video on your screen and keep training your mind, your discipline, and your future. Quiet. Strength, steady habits, real results.